Hey, what's up, everybody? Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check In for June 8th, 2020. Shout out to my youngest. She's turning 4 today, so that's awesome. Everybody say happy birthday to Genevieve. She is quite a feisty character, and she's excited to be 4. So that is the big news in my world. Today's topic is a little look inside the studio of Ned in the Cloud and putting together this daily live stream. I am almost up to 50 episodes now, and I thought it might be interesting to reflect on that. My 50th episode is actually going to be a Terraform Tuesday, so I thought maybe I'd do it a day early just to talk a little bit about how this came to be and how I do it on a daily basis. In case you thought about starting your own live stream, I've learned a few things. I'm certainly not an expert by any means, but that is what I want to talk about. I don't have any housekeeping items this week because we're going to be talking kind of meta anyway, but I do want to check in with you, the viewer, and the listener. How are you doing? Last week was rough. It's the beginning of a new week. I like to approach it with hope and humility and believe that things are going to get better. In terms of the pandemic, the county I'm in just went up a level in terms of interactivity. So now small gatherings can happen. You can go out to an outdoor cafe as long as they set up the tables appropriately. So in that regard, things are loosening up and getting better, but I think there's still a lot of civil unrest and things that are going on outside of that. So if you know someone who needs help, help them out. And if you need help, reach out. You can reach out to me, Ned1313 on Twitter. I'm available on LinkedIn. I always have an ear ready to listen and a mouth ready to stay silent while you're talking and listen to what you're saying. So if that's something that you need, ping me and let me know. Let's get into the topic for today, and is inside the studio. How do I put this together on a daily basis? I think probably the first thing that people wonder is topics, because every episode has a different topic. How do I get my topic ideas? And one is I just poll you, the listener and viewer. What do you want me to talk about? I have knowledge in a whole bunch of different areas and opinions on some of them. So I, pinged a couple people and said, what do you want to hear? And then people have just reached out to me and organically said, here's a topic that I'm interested in. And I keep a list of ideas in OneNote that just has a checkbox next to each one. And as I cover the topic, I check it off. And sometimes I look at the topic and I say, that's not just one, that's like 4 topics. And I break it up into those 4 topics, and that's 4 episodes. So it really depends on the question. Let's see a few that I have in the queue right now. I'll just, we rely increasingly on public cloud PaaS services. Can you recommend a monitoring strategy that doesn't suck? Okay, that's a fun one. I will definitely get to that topic at some point. Another one is, I'm a junior engineer, but I think I'm ready to lead a project. How do I approach my manager for the opportunity? That's a great question. So that is another topic that I'm going to get into. So that's where the non-series topics come from. And then I have Terraform Tuesday and Thursdays on the Edge. So that's really easy for me to come up with topics for, because people ask me questions about Terraform all the time. And I can use Terraform Tuesday as a forum to answer some of the more interesting questions, as well as provide some guidance for the certification that's out there. And if a new feature comes out, I can tell you what I think of it. So that's Terraform Tuesday. And then when it comes to Thursdays on the Edge, I'm actively doing edge research for GigaOM. So as I do that research, I learn about new things and I like to talk about them. So that's like 2 days out of the week where I don't need a net new topic, which is one of the reasons I've been thinking about maybe doing a third series, just so it gives me a well-defined bucket. Say, Mondays are this, Tuesdays are this, Wednesdays. I could just map out the whole week with a different series for each day, so you know what to tune into for what interests you. It makes creating the playlists easier, and it also helps me map out the existing topics. So I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure about it, but we'll get back to that. So okay, that's how topics arrive. And then it all goes into OneNote. How long does it take me to write up an episode? Do I script the whole thing out? Well, I think if you watched any of these, you're pretty aware that I don't script this whole thing out. Hopefully it sounds fairly natural. What I do is I just do bullet points. I think through a topic, I put down the bullet points, the main things that I want to hit as I go through my talk. And you can see me sometimes glance down to reference the OneNote, though sometimes if I really get going, I don't need the OneNote at all. And that's how I outline it. So I don't script it out. And I really recommend, if you're doing live or live-ish, don't script everything out, because it's very hard, unless you're a trained actor, to read something and not sound like you're reading. I discovered this when I was doing promo videos when I was working for a value-added reseller. I wrote up a full script and they were doing it as a voiceover for what was going on in the screen. And the guy who was directing me was like, just stop reading the script because it sounds like you're reading. And it's really hard not to do that. So I recommend, don't write a script unless you're a trained actor, because you're going to really struggle with reading it in a way that's engaging. So just, bear that in mind. And once I'm ready to stream, what am I using there? Well, I've got a Logitech C922 webcam. I've got this Shure SM7B microphone hooked into a mic preamp. I've got a pretty nice setup. I have considered bringing in a nicer camera, and I actually went out and bought this. I don't know if you can see it. You can kind of see it a little bit. I bought a Sony Alpha 500 and connected it in, and I like it, but it's a little fussy with the focus. Getting me in focus and everything else blurred. I need to get some different lenses for it before I consider using it as a daily driver. And it resets every time, so I have to refocus it every time I fire it up. It's like, this is just so much easier to fire up OBS. So I use Streamlabs OBS for the software. I have the webcam and the microphone all set up, and I can just fire it up. I don't have to think about it and start live streaming and get into the actual meat of what I want to talk about. So that's the actual equipment. In terms of post-production, when it comes to YouTube, I don't really do much in post-production. I update the descriptions and whatnot, but I don't do anything beyond that. Sometimes I'll trim the beginning if I paused a while before I started talking because something felt weird about the live stream. So I sometimes tweak that. But aside from that, I don't add a whole bunch of links around the screen or anything like that. I find those personally annoying, and I think maybe you do too. So I don't put those in. If you want a bunch of links on the screen, I can add those post-production, but I get the impression people don't want me to do that. And then I take the audio from the recorded video and I throw it into Camtasia, where I already have the intro music ready to go, and that gets rendered out as an M4A and published through Anchor.fm for the podcast. And so for the podcast, I basically take the title from this and I take the description text from the YouTube video and paste them right over into Anchor.fm and upload that M4A file, and I'm done. So in terms of all in, how long does it take me to actually write an episode, record an episode, and publish the podcast? It takes me about 30 minutes. 30 minutes a day. That's not a huge time commitment. I probably start around 11:15 really mapping stuff out, and I've got this completed and I've got the podcast published before noon. So 30 minutes a day. I'll say it's 30 minutes a day of active work, but actually it's probably more than that, because I'm thinking about these topics constantly throughout the day. And if I know what topic I want to talk about the next day, I might be thinking about it for a while. And also some of the Terraform stuff I've been doing slightly more involved demos for. Because of that, it takes me longer to map out what I want to do, because I want to screen share and have some live code that I'm showing. They can really, but overall about half an hour a day. So that's not a huge time commitment. If you're thinking about doing something like this, it's going to take longer for the first week or two. And then as you do more of them, it becomes less effort because you streamline your process. Speaking of streamlining my process, one other thing I have is automations set up for the posting. So I use Zapier, and Zapier looks at the feed for YouTube. And when a new video gets published, it creates a Twitter post and a LinkedIn post for that. And then it also watches the podcast feed. And when the new episode of the podcast is published, it also puts that in my LinkedIn and Twitter. And it actually doesn't do that directly. It goes through Buffer, which is another subscription piece of software that I use that posts for me on LinkedIn and Twitter at specific times. So with that combination of Zapier and Buffer, I'm able to just put the right hashtag or the right information in a post, and it takes care of the rest of getting that content published and viewable. So by doing that, I cut down on having to create those posts manually, which is kind of nice. Now, that's how things work today. Potential improvements. I already talked about one, potentially replacing the camera with something a little bit nicer. The other thing been thinking about doing is guests, potentially having a guest every once in a while, maybe once a week or once every other week, have a guest on to either do their own spot or have a conversation with me, and potentially deploying a green screen. I mean, I don't know how you feel about my background. Is it too busy? Is it not busy enough? Would you prefer a green screen with just a graphic or something behind me? I have a green screen. I just haven't deployed it yet. So that's another potential way of improving the show. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. If you have topics you want me to cover, if there's potential improvements to the show that you want to see, let me know. Leave some comments for this video. Reach out to me on Twitter. It's Ned1313, or hit me up on LinkedIn messaging. I look forward to hearing from you. Until tomorrow, tomorrow's Terraform Tuesday. Stay healthy and stay safe, everybody.